All right, you guys, Daniela here with another episode of the Spa Marketing Made Easy podcast. And for this episode, the past few episodes, we've been talking a lot about the world of woo-woo and how I've been slowly dipping my toe into it. But just like my coach, he loves to combine science and combine studies and facts with this kind of stuff. And today I have my very good friend and guest, Rachel Llanes, who is a health educator for the Army Wellness Center. She's going to be talking with us about the mind-body connection and how you can utilize that mind-body connection, understand it in your business and use it to grow your business, connect more with your clients. And some people would say, hey, that is woo-woo. I think it's borderline. I think that it's something that it's just something that it's a real thing. And I think after we hear what Rachel has to say about it, you'll be more and more convinced. So Rachel, thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this mind-body connection, because if you just say that to some people, it means different things to different people, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And we're just really beginning to grasp the scientifics behind the mind-body connection. So as you mentioned, my background is working with the mind-body connection and how to use that information. Like you said, it can be very woo-woo and existential. And my job is to bring it back down to planet Earth and allow my clients, the people that I work with, to have actionable steps once they become informed about how powerful the mind is. So I teach people, and what I'm looking so forward to sharing with you and your listeners today is that there are 5 essential resources that we all have access to become our best selves. And if you are an entrepreneur, it is so essential that you are functioning optimally. And these 5 resources are quality nutrition. I talk about this all of the time with everyone I come across. One of my passions, definitely. We are learning so much about how essential the microbiome is, those bacteria that live in our guts and our intestines. They play a huge role in our mood. So not only physically, but also mentally, they have a huge impact on us. And if we're eating processed foods, high sugar foods, they really don't feed the good bacteria in our guts like leafy dark vegetables do, leafy greens, quality organic fruits, lean, clean protein, and complex unprocessed carbohydrates. One of the points that probably gets the most giggles in the classes that I teach on base at Schofield is the fact that we need to become more aware of what our stool says about our health. Literally every single day we should be having a bowel movement, and there are very specific parameters, and literally your body is grading your nutrition. Does it pass easy? Is it light brown, smooth, and sink? Is it clean to wipe? Is it uncomfortable to pass? Is it pebbly? All of these things is your body's way of trying to communicate with you as to how clean your diet is. And a lot of it is intuitive. People get so caught up in this diet is better than this diet. I'm hearing a lot about the ketogenic diet right now. Years ago, it was the low carb Atkins diet. And then
which turned out to be really unhealthy, right? Because of
turned out to be really unhealthy. Our bodies crave carbs. We genetically want to run on glucose. And when you over restrict carbohydrates, what tends to happen is you do drop weight. You drop weight really fast. Unfortunately, not all of that is from body fat. A good amount of that is from fat-free mass, everything other than fat. For example, that muscle that we're all trying to preserve. And then you inevitably fall off the wagon because we're wired to crave carbs. Let's say you start with a slice of bread and then you just snowball into full-on carbs again. You're going to gain all that weight back that you lost on your low-carb diet and then some. And research is showing that yo-yo dieting is even worse for the body than just being a little bit overweight.
So, okay, before we get because I know we could talk for like an hour just about nutrition, but let's go. You said there are 5 resources, and
Yeah.
I want to list out those 5. So you said quality nutrition was 1.
Yes, quality nutrition is number 1. Number 2 is self-awareness.
Oh, that's big.
Self-awareness is so huge. And Daniela, you'll have to wrangle me in if I get too off topic. These are all such important topics that are the key ingredients to being your best self. And in a nutshell, a lot of us aren't really aware of what we're thinking, what we're feeling, why we're feeling it, why we're responding to people in certain ways. And, truly successful people are incredibly self-aware.
Mm-hmm.
They know themselves, they know their needs, they know their triggers, and it's a skill. It's not something you're born with, right? It's not just this innate gift. Some people aren't higher self-awareness than others by birth. It is a skill that we can develop, and it's a skill that you can train. One of my favorite ways to do that is through MBSR, which is mindfulness-based stress reduction.
And this is something, so when you say self-awareness and when you say, really like a lot of people think, okay, meditation or, these kind of things, which a lot of people will categorize depending on what your definition of woo-woo is. But a lot of people will categorize that as just, oh, that's that new age stuff. That's that woo-woo stuff. But you're actually using these techniques in a military, in a Army Wellness Center. So the military is on board with these specific techniques.
Oh, the future of the military is mindfulness. I mean, I was meeting just last week with some researchers researchers out of DC, the Walter Reed Army Institute of Research, and they're doing this huge study on mindfulness right now. And it feels woo-woo because the public doesn't know the science. Unfortunately, these scholarly journals put out articles that are so dry and so bland. There's no passion, there's no oomph. It's really difficult to connect with it. But I can summarize for you right now the research we found with mindfulness. Improved immune function, increased neuroplasticity. So think of your brain on steroids, basically, higher functioning brains, new brain cells, improved communication between the sometimes irrational and emotional parts of the brain and the prefrontal cortex, where we have our higher functioning, more intentional, more rational thoughts.
One thing I learned, and this is, it's still related to this topic, but when you get pregnant and you have pregnancy brain, you're actually losing gray matter in your brain. That is what is making you foggy. And I was reading this study that MIT put out, and MIT is like an engineering, very sciencey school, right? And they had this whole article that talked about what was happening when you meditate. And when you meditate, you're actually regenerating gray matter. So that spaciness that comes with pregnancy and those first few months of being a mom, I still have it. But it's something that you can actually get back. And for me, that was a trigger of like, all right, I'm going to really put some energy into meditation, because it's not just like sitting here. It's actually really working out your brain. It's working out, just like when we run, we're doing cardiovascular health. When we're meditating, we're working out our brain. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. I mean, I couldn't have said it better. That's so eloquent. And what I would love to see is a researcher look at that mommy brain in newly pregnant women and its relationship or how much is affected by mindfulness. So I would love to see an experimental group of pregnant women going through a mindfulness-based training program, and then a control group who doesn't, and see how much of that mental fog they are experiencing. I would put money on the fact that the pregnant women that were trained in mindfulness had a much higher functioning brain during pregnancy than the control group who didn't get that mindfulness training.
Okay, so let's move on to number 3.
Oh, before we move on though, there's a couple more benefits of mindfulness I just have to say. So we already talked about improved immune function, neuroplasticity, improved communication between the emotional and rational parts of your brain. This is really fascinating. We see a down regulation of genes that code for inflammation, disease, and cancer in people that practice mindfulness. We see an upregulation in genes that code for efficient glucose metabolism and circadian rhythms, 2 components that are so essential to health and wellness.
Wow.
And lastly, you see elongated telomeres. Think of telomeres as the ends of your chromosomes. They're kind of like that plastic piece at the end of your shoelace. It keeps our genes together.
Oh, we talk about those all the time in skincare. So we're talking at the derm conferences when you're talking about what lasers do and how to deal with anti-aging, they're talking about telomeres.
That's amazing. Yeah, the research that Liz Blackburn has done, I mean, she got the Nobel Prize for discovering telomeres. She's incredible. And I love that your industry is so science focused. That's really exciting to me because typically when I talk about telomeres on base with my active duty soldiers and DoD civilians, they kind of glaze over like, what is this crazy what you're talking about? So wonderful. Your audience already knows about telomeres. So yes, mindfulness elongates telomeres. So it's kind of like the fountain of youth. Really it is. And if you can couple skincare, quality nutrition, and mindfulness, you're going to see amazing results.
Well, and I think that even just the self-awareness piece alone, as an esthetician, as a business owner, if you're implementing these things, okay, improved immune function, right? So you're going to be healthier, you're going to have more energy, you're going to be more clear when we talk about improved brain function. So you're going to be more clear, you're going to be make better choices or be thinking about strategy in a bigger way instead of feeling like the ups and downs of, well, I guess that goes with sugar crashing with the nutrition, but combining all of these, improved communication, you know, the aging piece. So you can tie just with these 2, knowing these and understanding these can boost your business and boost your life. You know, it's not just about what is the next strategy or what can I do to improve my business. It's really what kind of person can I be and let those results kind of radiate. You know, I'm a self-aware person. I'm someone who eats healthy. I'm someone who lives a healthy lifestyle. And then what do those type of people do? How did they show up in their business?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. So let's go to the next one. I'm excited.
Okay. 3. So 3 is sufficient sleep. And this is
a
big one.
Yes.
So we need 7 to 9 hours. And a lot of people think, oh, no, not me. I can function on, 5 to 6. Well, the reality is about 0.5% of the population actually has genes that allow them to function properly with limited sleep. But the average Joe and Janet, we need those 7 to 9 hours. During sleep, there's an incredible system of hormones that are interacting. Our testosterone, men and women both have testosterone, our estrogen levels, our stress hormones are influenced by getting quality sleep. Talk about appetite, 2 hormones, ghrelin and leptin, they play a major role in how much we eat, when we stop, when we feel satisfied. All of these things are influenced by sufficient sleep or insufficient sleep. And we also know that while we're sleeping, the brain cleanses itself. There's fluid in the brain that is kind of drained while we're sleeping and toxins are removed. And the brain needs those 7 to 9 hours to do that.
And I think what we need to add here is that it's 7 to 9 continuous hours, not 2-hour chunks or 3-hour chunks. You know, it's the continuous letting your body go into that REM deep sleep, which again, as a new mom,
yeah.
Although I'm proud to say that Taya has been sleeping through the night, 11 to 12 hours for the past 2 weeks. And that has been the most amazing, like that change in my life has been just phenomenal. Like I've noticed just me being so much more present and so much more sharp in what I'm doing, because I have been operating on, you know, insufficient sleep for about 14 months now.
That's incredible. Yeah, it's really challenging when you have a new baby or when you're pregnant and you're uncomfortable. You know, these are things that we really can't control. A new baby doesn't understand mommy needs her 7 to 9 hours.
But I think even to tie it back to a business owner, you know, your business can be your baby too. When I very first started Addo Aesthetics, I was working crazy hours, and I was like, oh, I can stay up late, you know, to get all of this stuff done. And you're not sleeping then as well. So it's one of those things where you actually are more efficient if you just take the time and go to sleep, instead of trying to stay up or pull an all-nighter and go from there. So I can see it. I'm right now in the very mommy world. And so everything that I'm looking at, whether it's in business or whatever, it's all relating it back to that space. But this is true for anybody,
Yeah, which is a perfect segue, speaking of being a mom, to number 4.
Okay. Let's
Number
hear it.
4 is authentic attachments,
Mm.
authentic relationships. A recent study came out of Harvard. They've been doing this for 70 years, Daniela. They've had 3 different directors of this study, and they wanted to look at what really predicts longevity and quality life.
Oh my gosh, I've seen a YouTube video on this. It's so cool. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Explain what it is.
So we should put that YouTube video in the links.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll include it in the show notes.
Every human being needs to get exposed to this research. They expected nutrition, exercise, and sleep to be at the very top, and genetics, of course, and physical activity levels. But what they found surprised them. They found that the number 1 predictor of longevity and quality of life was our relationships, which intuitively makes so much sense because, you know, we're social creatures. We are wired to connect. We have this innate drive to be seen and understood and loved unconditionally. And that actually affects us at the cellular level. And so that study is just such a confirmation that, you know, we really need to take a look at our relationships. Do we have people that we feel we can be genuine with, the good, the bad, the ugly? And if that's an area that's lacking in your personal life, I promise you it is affecting your business, because when you feel loved and you feel connected, it radiates out of you energetically, and your clientele will feel that and be attracted to it.
Well, even just creating authentic relationships with your clients. I mean, that's a huge piece, you know, is showing up, being present with them, letting them know that they matter, treating them like a human being and following up with them, really letting them know that you care and wanting to build that relationship. And they're not just a number. They're not just a customer. You know their name, you know their kids' names, you know, and those things, obviously, if you have a bunch of clients, there's tricks that you can do where you write down in your chart notes, you know, what their kids' names are and different things about them until you get to know them well enough that you just automatically know them. But those authentic relationships, those are the things that are going to differentiate you from the big spa down the street. Those are the things that will really make the difference.
Yeah, I wanted to prepare myself for this podcast. So I called a really close friend of mine, Crystal Coro. She founded Crystal Clear Skin. She's based out of LA. She's an esthetician, and she's had a very successful business. And I asked her, you know, what makes you special? What sets you apart? How do you have 62,000 Instagram followers? And she said, I care. I care about every client I come into contact with. And I know that every treatment, I'm having a client come to me excited for her treatment or his treatment. And I want to honor that. I want to bring my energy. I want to bring my presentness to them and give my best, because I know that it's felt. And that's my most important job, is to be present with my client in the treatment every time, regardless of what may be going on in the background. I need to be present, which is so congruent with self-awareness and mindfulness.
Yeah, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And it's, what we do as estheticians is so much more than giving someone beautiful skin. We're giving women and men too, but primarily women, we're giving them confidence. We're building them up. We're whatever that confidence does to hold their head a little bit higher and go out and take bold action. Maybe they're going to apply for that promotion, or maybe they're going to start their own business. Maybe they're going to become a solo esthetician, or, whatever it is. When we are being present and giving them, obviously, this nice, relaxing treatment, but we're letting them feel like they matter. We're listening to them. And it's, as a mom, it's like the thought of going and laying on a table and having time that's just for me, and being able to relax and letting this other person take control of what's going on and do it in this lovely, relaxating way. I mean, that is such a beautiful gift. And it's so much more than getting, my extractions or whatever needs to be done. So we have to remember that as providers, is that we are doing so much more than popping pimples. It's a much deeper work.
It really is. I'm on the client end of your profession, and I was raised by a hippie mom who never wore sunscreen, who never wore makeup, who never did her hair. So I really grew up in a non-image household. And so I kind of judged the beauty fields, the beauty professions. And then I had a wedding and I had my makeup professionally done. And it was a moment in my life that shifted my perception of anybody who does skin, hair, makeup. I mean, it's a profound profession. When you make a woman feel feminine, when you make a woman feel confident and beautiful, you give her power. And I just got goosebumps, because it is really a service that goes far beyond, removing the blackheads or extracting this or extracting that. It's an emotional shift.
It is.
That you provide.
It really is. And I think that if more estheticians understood how valuable and how important their work is, they would be much more comfortable promoting themselves and sharing what they do and shouting what they do from the rooftops, and stop worrying about being salesy or pushy, because what they're doing is they're helping people on such a deep level, but because they're such empaths, because they care so much about their clients, the last thing that they want to do is sound pushy or salesy or promotional or whatever, because it is such a connection.
That's what I love about one of your previous podcasts. You said, treat it as an education, not a sales pitch. And that felt very genuine to me. Like, I do want to be educated. You are the professional. Like, tell me what I need to do. And if there's trust and rapport, I'm much more likely to feel like you just want to help me. You're not trying to sell something to me. You just want to help me. And I'm very open to that. And I think most people are too.
Yeah, nobody wants to be sold to. But if you're sharing just the information, hey, this is, in my professional opinion, this is what I would use. This would be the best AM and PM regimen. This would be the best treatment, protocol for you, whatever it is. You're educating them, and then the ball is in their court. And that's not salesy at all. That's sharing of information. Okay, number 5.
Number 5, okay, regular exercise.
Yes.
There is something so interesting to me about movement and psychology. My background is actually in psychology. I have my master's in marriage family therapy. And I've learned in the years in the field of mental health that the mind is a very difficult place to help someone organize their thoughts, their emotions, their history, their current context, their future goals, their fears. It's a very complex system to work with. The body, on the other hand, kind of helps you bypass the messiness and the complexity of mental health. If you can just get your body moving, you can release endorphins that literally are a stimulant for your brain and your mood.
So would you say that men do this better than women? And the reason that I'm going there is that men, we see them get angry and then they go boxing, or they go for a run, or they do something physical. Women, we tend to analyze things and go deep and process the conversation over and over and over in our mind again. And I know that those are two big overgeneralizations, but do you see that in your work? Do you see that men are better at connecting movement and psychology than women?
I don't see the last comment in my work. What I do see is we are genetically wired very differently. You know, the coding of a female, sex is very different than the coding of a male sex. And males are much more wired for aggression, and they're much more wired to turn in when they're feeling emotions. And women are much more wired to connect socially. Mm-hmm. So, without getting too sciencey on you, there's been a lot of research with apes and how they handle aggression and adverse experiences. The women will turn to one another. They'll seek comfort in their relationships, and the men will go off and do something on their own and kind of turn into their shells until the emotional wave is kind of passed. I also think that, culturally, we're conditioned as women to be much more verbal about how we're feeling, and men are more conditioned, man up, handle it. Mm-hmm. And it's unfortunate because I think it's limiting for both sexes. Mm-hmm. I have found the more active I am, the more I crave that outlet. So when I have something really unpleasant, let's say, happen in my life, I will either turn to someone who I know understands the background so I can share with them and have that connection, or I'll go for a run, or I'll go for a hike. I think both of these, the relational and the physical, that's why they're both on my 5 most important resource lists, because they both play a role. But men do tend to be more physically active because it's a more concrete release, whereas verbal communication is much more emotional and mental.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay, cool. So let's now that you've given us the 5 resources, right, of understanding the mind and body connection. How can we use this information to be a better entrepreneur? So I know we've kind of touched on some of these in tangents that we've gone off on, but what would you say an esthetician, who is building her business or owns a spa and is building their spa, how can they use this information to help them? And what's an action that they can do today? Listen to this episode. What can they do right away to take action on this?
That's a great question. And the application is a lot more simple than some people would want you to believe. Literally, just becoming aware of these 5 resources can shift their perception. Because if you start understanding that nutrition, self-awareness, sleep, good relationships, and exercise are integral in being the best version of yourself, you start thinking differently. Your perception is shifted. So, if you haven't exercised today, go out for a walk. If you haven't had healthy food all day long, let's say you had a frappuccino and a croissant at Starbucks this morning and you drove through Wendy's with the kids this afternoon, it's not too late. Your day isn't blown. Have a healthy salad. Drizzle it with some homemade dressing like red wine vinegar, cold pressed olive oil, fresh cracked pepper, and lemon juice. So, any little tiny thing, and for each person it's different. If maybe you're not motivated to improve your nutrition and your exercise right now, try to put the phone down half an hour before bedtime to give you a little bit more quality sleep. Or call up someone that you love, that because you're building your own business, because you're an entrepreneur, because you're an esthetician, life has kind of carried you away. You may think about them every day, but you don't reach out. Pick up the phone, call them up and say, hey, I only have 2 minutes. I just want you to know I love you and I appreciate you and I miss you. So that's one example from all of the 5. So, for your listeners, I challenge them to pick any of the 5 and choose an actionable step that works best for them.
So one of the things that I have started doing just in the past couple of weeks, I've been really into my 90X planner. It's this journal that breaks things down into 90 days. So you set a goal and then you work on it and focus all your energy and attention on accomplishing that in the next 90 days. And I don't use it exactly the same way as it's meant to. There's this one section that's like where you have to follow up or like tasks that you have to do to follow up. And one thing that I've started doing is writing down all of my accomplishments and all of my wins for that day. So all of my successes that have happened. Because when we are building a business, we tend to focus on the negative review or the stuff that we didn't get done, or there's always going to be a pile of things that didn't get done. And that can bring you into this downward spiral, that when you're in this downward spiral, just like you were saying, if you've been to Starbucks, and had a Frappuccino and a croissant for breakfast and Wendy's for lunch, it's like, it's not too late. But when we get in these spirals, we think, well, I've already done this, I may as well do that, and I think that with our accomplishments in business, if we're just looking at like, well, I got a negative review. Well, nobody's on my schedule. Well, nobody is on this. If we switch the perception and do little things like writing down, I got a blog post up today, or I scheduled all of my social media, or I confirmed that I'm going to a networking event. Little things, it can be little things, but that can keep your mind in that higher vibrational state where you're focusing on the positive instead of going through this negative spiral. So that is just what really came up for me when you were talking. I was thinking, that's something.
I love that. I mean, self-confident people don't have this magical muscle that some people don't. They're self-confident because they've mastered the art of follow through. They've made goals for themselves. They've either succeeded in the execution of those goals, or they've learned from their failures. And failure really gets a bad name. And there's a difference between failure and really negative self-talk. Mm-hmm. Failure is an opportunity for you to learn. If you get a negative review, don't ruminate on it and talk down to yourself, but is there a lesson here? Is there a nugget in this criticism? And apply it. I love your 90X journal. Another option that I use is called the Best Self Journal. It came through my Instagram feed one day and I clicked it and I flipped through it and I loved it because it has you name 2 primary goals and it gives you 13 weeks. And you map out the month, the week, and the day. What are your goals? You start off with gratitude. So what are 3 things you're grateful for? Then you name what your tasks are for the day. Then after the day is done, you talk about, did you succeed in those tasks? What got in the way? What are you most proud of today? And I think any kind of journaling, if it's 90X, if it's Best Self Journal, that is going to enhance number 2 on your 5 most important resources, self-awareness. If we weren't so busy denying our mistakes and internalizing them, like it says something bad about who we are as human beings, we might actually learn from them and elevate our business or our professional life or our relationships or all of the above to a whole nother level we never even fathomed to be possible.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So, okay, I know that you had a couple of book recommendations. So I want to have you share those before we finish up here, because I know you're an avid reader and you always have great recommendations. So what do you have for us today?
Okay, I am personally going to recommend two books. One is specifically for entrepreneurs. So I'm going to start with that. It's called Girl Code by Cara Leyba, Leyba. And the subtitle is Unlocking the Secrets to Success, Sanity, and Happiness for the Female Entrepreneur. I'm recommending it because it's so full of life and so full of actionable steps like exercise, exercising your spiritual practice, reaching out to healthy, supportive women, avoiding the toxic women. Unfortunately, there are toxic women out there that will see you as competition and as something to snuff out versus supporting one another as a team and kind of wanting to rise together and elevate the field of aesthetics as a community. Really recommend that book. It was a fantastic read. I literally read it from cover to cover from my flight from LAX to Honolulu last year. And there's a ton of little exercises in it at the end of every single chapter. So she asks you, what are your big takeaways from this chapter's content? And she'll ask you some really provocative questions too, like, what do women need less of? What do women need more of? Again, it's going to elevate your self-awareness.
So that might be a fun one to actually buy the book instead of putting it on Audible.
Oh yeah, great note. So please do buy the hard copy of Girl Code, because it's not just a book. It is also a personal workbook. Like, my copy is literally covered in highlights. It's covered in hearts from little quotes I loved. It's marked up from cover to cover. Definitely, you must buy the hard copy. Go old school on this one for sure and get the hard copy.
Okay, and the other book?
Okay, the other book is called The Willpower Instinct by Dr. Kelly McGonigal. She is a brilliant health psychologist who teaches at Stanford University, and she goes all into how the brain works. So there's neurology, there's evolutionary psychology, there's economics. There's so many fields that she pulls from that really explains what is this thing called willpower. And why do I feel like when there's a plate of Oreos in front of me, suddenly it's gone? Or, why do I have all these emails coming into my business account and I'm resisting opening them? I'm procrastinating, or I'm not following up with clients. I'm not doing the social media component of my business. What is my problem? Why don't I have the willpower to just push through and do it? Well, she goes into the science as to what can get in the way of follow through. And she also talks about how our brains are put together to, if you have the right code, if you have the right strategy, to optimize the probability of you reaching your goals. If it's in your business, if it's in your body, if it's in your mind, whatever your goal is. It doesn't have to be your business, doesn't have to be any health habit change. It may be, your television watching is a time sink. It could be anything that you're trying to change.
Very cool. Well, we will be sure to link those up in the show notes, along with that Harvard study on longevity. Very, very cool. If you guys want to get any more information from Rachel, if you're interested in the studies that she has been kind of mentioning throughout this episode, be sure to send us a note over at hello@addoaesthetics.com and let us know what you're interested in, and we can connect you with Rachel that way. So Rachel, thank you so much. This has been a wonderful episode. I love how we can talk about health and nutrition and the mind and your body and tie it all back into aesthetics. This is really, if you're one of those people who is like, I'm struggling with the work-life balance, this is really kind of the glue that ties everything together, I feel like, these 5 resources. So awesome, you guys. I'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you so much.